Om Shahana Bhavatu Shahano Bhunaktu Shahabirjam Karuvabhai Tejashina Badhitamastu Ma Vidvishabhai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Anindita, now I am making you host.
Okay, sir.
Now it is over to you. Before that, I am requesting all of you, please to introduce yourself. Who is Anindita Madam? Anindita Madam is our academic assistant for the course of applied psychometrics. So I am requesting all of you, please to introduce yourself. Dr. Rupita Chatterjee, please to introduce.
Good evening, madam. Good evening, sir. Myself, Dr. Urpita Chatterjee. Here I am student of this course, and regarding my professional life, I am assistant professor and head department of botany of Parshad College, and I am also associated as movement therapist, dance movement therapist in the Institute of Clinic Brain, and I am also a classical dance performer. Stage performer for the last 27 years.
Thank you, Dr. Chatterjee. Now requesting Abhishek, please to introduce. Abhishek, are you here? Okay, Darsh, please to introduce yourself.
Hello, sir.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, Darsh, please introduce.
Hello. My name is Darshpreet Kaur. I'm from Jammu and Kashmir. I have completed my master's in psychology from University of Jammu.
Thank you, Darsh.
Thank
Hello.
Abhishek, are you available?
Yes, sir. Now.
So please do introduce yourself briefly.
Yeah. My name is Abhishek Khandia. I am basically from Rajasthan. I live in Ahmedabad, Gujarat. And I'm completing BE and also Master Social Work. I'm counselor, specialist in Corona counseling. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Abhishek. Now requesting Priyanka.
Yes, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, ma'am. Actually, I am Dr. Priyanka Devnath, and I have completed my homeopathic the BHMS course from West Bengal University of Health Sciences. And after that, completing my graduation, I have completed the PG diploma course in rehabilitation psychology from Rajabaja Science College in the year 2015. And I have joined this class to learn about the mental health counseling, ma'am. And I am now practicing, yes, sir, my homeopathic medicine. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
That's nice. That's nice. Shanindita, you will get the mixed group of students here. I hope you will enjoy very much.
Of course, of course. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for introducing yourselves. So, in that same trend, I would like to introduce myself as well. I am Anindita. I am currently here as the academic assistant for applied psychometrics course. But I am also an assistant professor of psychology. I work in Chennai. I'm also a practitioner of solution-focused brief therapy. So, I would just like to get an understanding of what you have learned in this course so far, so that we can integrate that with what we are going to look into today, because this is essentially our one of our obligations as practitioners that we're going to look into today. So if you all could just summarize a little bit on what you think are the important takeaways for you from this course, that will be useful for me to integrate into what we're going to talk today. Anybody, would you like to begin?
Ma'am, here we have
Yeah.
learned various topics. তার মধ্যে I recall the topics mainly the behavior modification and the like operant conditioning, the reinforcement, punishment, social learning theory. I think social learning theory by Bandura, and yes, ma'am, and Kohlberg's theory. I remember the self-regulation, self-efficacy, these topics, ma'am, mainly. The observational learning, social learning, mainly these topics, ma'am. Cognitive development.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody else? Would you like to add anything else to this?
Yeah, Freud theory also.
Come again, sir?
Freud theory.
Okay. Anything else?
Madam,
I've also studied the Freud theory for the topographical model, the ego, superego, conscious, unconscious, and subconscious mind. Other than that, we have also done the directive counseling method and non-directive counseling methods.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, ma'am, I
Anything
want to
else?
say something.
Yeah. Yeah.
We also explain the behavior of a counselor and the property of counselor and how to counseling. They also, with brief, they explain.
Okay. Okay. Oh, thank you. Anything else? Anything else you would like to add on to this?
Madam, I just want to
Yes.
say something. The majority of the topics has whatever has been discussed in our these Arpit sessions. Our friends have already told to you. But I just want to add one more point, that here we have to give exam on majority of the topics is concerned with psychology, and it is really new to me, and I really love that sessions. And but here we have one paper on Rabindric psychology. But can you please give us some light regarding Rabindric psychotherapy? Because we don't have means one classes has been taken by Dr. Dottorai regarding psychotherapy, and he said some words about Rabindric psychotherapy. But we have to give 100 marks exam on Rabindric psychotherapy. Can you help us in this regard?
I think that sir would be the best person to ask that question, because I am not very well versed in Rabindric psychotherapy. I am only familiar with the basics of it. So I think sir would be the best person to ask this question. Sir, would you like to answer?
Thank you, Arpita. I will take one class, maybe on Tuesday. Possibly Sriyoshi has arranged the class, and then I will take it. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank
Before
you.
that, I am requesting all of you, please you study our videos on Rabindric psychotherapy. We have several videos, and that is also available in YouTube. It is free, so you can study. After that, that will be very easy for you to understand the Rabindric psychotherapy. Okay. Oh,
yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And sir's PPTs are also available on SlideShare. So if you'd like to look into that as well, please look into sir's PPT that's already available. That will help us jot down the points towards what we can understand through the videos. It will concretize our ideas. So I encourage you to please go through the videos as well as the PPTs for your understanding. Can we get on with today's topic? Just give me a moment while I share my screen. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. Great. So what we're going to do today is essentially that we're going to look into something called IEC on mental health. What do you think stands for IEC? Have you heard of this particular abbreviation? Are any of you familiar with this abbreviation? Yes. Are any of you familiar with this particular abbreviation? Okay. So we're just going to understand what it is. But before we understand IEC, we first need to understand what is our role as mental health professionals, right? Typically, we understand that our role as mental health professionals is to provide help to those who are suffering from some kind of mental distress. Yes? Are you all with me on this point?
Yes, ma'am.
So our idea is that whoever has some kind of mental distress and they're seeking out for help, we are available to help them out with certain strategies and certain methodologies to alleviate that particular distress. That's the assumption that we have. But it does not stop with that. Our duties and our obligations to this field does not stop with that, right? So I would like to just familiarize you on what we already know since our school times and everything. People have already taught us these 3 levels of prevention, right? We always keep talking about this primary, secondary, and tertiary levels of prevention. Can you all recall what these mean? What do you think is primary prevention?
Actually, ma'am, in medical field, it is called that prevention is better than cure. Means
Yes.
something is when we become aware that something is going to happen.
Yes.
We just stop before happening.
Yes. Yes, so that is primary prevention, where we stop something from happening well ahead before it happens, right? What is secondary prevention then?
Ma'am, it is early intervention that actually decreases some specific problem that is prevailing at the time.
Yeah, so it is essentially like an early intervention. Can we say that?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. So a secondary prevention is where it's something like an early intervention, so that your distress or some kind of issues does not become more complex or its prognosis is made better, right? And tertiary, do you know what tertiary prevention is?
Yes, ma'am. It basically means to improve the quality of life by reducing the symptoms, the major causes of that particular problem.
Yeah, so in tertiary prevention, we can, yes, please go ahead.
Yes, I think the rehabilitation becomes in this tertiary prevention. Means the disability, reducing the disability already occurred due to some disease or something.
Exactly. So in the tertiary prevention, it is already seen that the particular distress or the disorder has taken it's toll to a great extent on an individual, and we're trying to make the best of whatever is left of it, right? We're trying to make them easy to access a lot of things. We're trying to help them ease pain in a lot of areas. We're trying to help them ease out the distress that's been caused due to some kind of a chronic problem, let's say. So this is our understanding of primary, secondary, and tertiary. So today we're going to talk about a topic that will come under our primary prevention, right? Because we need to understand before we get into any of these three stages, all these three stages are obligations of practitioners, because you need to help create awareness, you need to help give early interventions, and you also need to help with improving the quality of life of those who have already faced a chronic issue. All of these three comes under your obligations as a mental health professional. So when we talk about this context, this IEC comes under our primary prevention, because this is going to talk a lot about creating awareness, breaking the stigma, and ensuring that there's increased access to those who are in deprived conditions, let's say, right? So this is our major understanding. Are we on the same page so far? Do I make sense to you so far?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. So moving on to the next topic. Why do we need prevention? Especially with regard to mental health. This is a question that you really need to answer, because when we say physical health, physical disability, there's always an answer, because physically you can see people struggling. Physically you can see people unable to do their daily life activities, right? So there's a clear answer to that whenever we ask people why do we need prevention for physical illnesses. But when we say mental illnesses, it is high time that we place some kind of priority to it. So why do you think we need prevention when we talk about mental health issues?
Hello? Hello.
Yes, sir. So why do we need prevention for mental health issues?
Can I say?
Yes, please go ahead.
Always prevention is better than cure. Yeah.
Yes.
It's Ayurveda I believe this also. मैडम अगर पहले से हम इसका ध्यान रखेंगे तो हमें वो चीज होगी नहीं और हम उसका इजीली इलाज
I
कर
would
सकते हैं.
please request you to speak in English. I am not aware of Hindi.
और इसी के साथ मैम दूसरा ये कि इफ ये अगर हेरिडिटरी भी होगा तो भी वो उसको क्योर इजीली हो सकता है मैडम.
Okay, yeah, I think I can get bits and pieces of what you're saying. Thank you. Yes, anybody else? Can you think of why we need to look into prevention?
Means, ma'am, writing something error, and after that to remove that error, we have to erase it. And the जो मतलब कि जो the error we have already done, it is very much difficult sometimes for us to erase it. So if we think before write, then the mistake will be little. Same in the
Exactly.
yes, same during the prevention also.
Exactly. So what you're all saying is true. If you are aware that something runs in your heredity, it's better to get it checked out before you start having the symptoms. And it's much better to always stop the problem before it happens. It's much better to not get into certain things, certain habits that will lead to certain aversive outcomes, right? So that's the reason why we even talk about prevention. But when we say mental health, there is a clear statistic when we say why we need to emphasize on the need for prevention of mental health issues, right? So when we say prevention of mental health issues, as you can see it in the slide here, let's look at the first paragraph here. The disability adjusted life here, which is the lifespan of a person who is affected by some kind of disability due to neuropsychiatric disorder, is much higher than any other physical illnesses, right? In India, our major physical illness issues that has the highest rate of mortality are things like diarrhea, malaria, worm infestations, and TB. So if we take all of these things into consideration, it is clearly seen through statistics that neuropsychiatric disorders take the topmost position on how much they reduce the life expectancy of an individual based on the illness that they are having. So neuropsychiatric disorder takes the first place because it causes a lot more disability than any of these diseases put together. To there's a lot of stigma, especially in India. We have a very mythology. We always have this brilliant way of always talking about demon possessions. We always have this brilliant way of addressing things as evil spirits and so on, without actually addressing what the actual issue is. Right? So therefore, this is something that we have to actively work to break. So if we keep continuing on the same path without increasing the level of awareness, we are going to end up with a lot more people who are believing in myths and stigma related to mental health issues, and that's not going to help our population's mortality in any way, right? So this is something we really need to look into. People are not aware of what could happen if they seek out help. People are genuinely not aware that there are health options available for treating mental health issues, right? If you just look into any general idea of a person suffering from some kind of mental issues in India, we're usually throwing them away, saying they're probably, disturbed. They're probably just, let's say, some kind of lunatics are usually the words that we use. Very insensitive words we use, and they're usually put out into the streets without providing enough help for them, right? And this is the major reason why we need to look into prevention, because we need to attack this area of having myths and stigma surrounding mental health issues. Are we on the same page so far?
Yes, ma'am. And the most bad thing in India is that we get the leave. We can apply for any leave application, leave, or submit the application for leave for our physical illness, but it is not accepted in the first phase that I am not mentally healthy. I am not feeling
Exactly.
Yes, ma'am.
Exactly. And even if we're talking about leave is one of the most minor issues, I would say, because if anybody is saying that they had a mental health episode, let's say somebody suffering from some kind of disorder, which is episodic in nature, and they're usually well, in the way they talk, the way they interact, and suddenly they are affected with an episode. These individuals are, let's say, if we take into the reality of what happens with these individuals, you can see that they're usually kicked out of their jobs. They are fired from their jobs because they are thought of as threats to other people working there. And they're usually thrown out of their homes. If they rented a place or something like that, they're usually thrown out of their homes because they're seen as threat to other tenants living there, not as some kind of illness that can be treated with medication or therapy, but rather these human beings, these very normal human beings who have some kind of behavioral or mental differences or neurodivergence, are treated as creatures that do not deserve basic rights. Yeah. So that is the major issue that we have to address. And that is the reason why we need to talk about it. And that is the reason why we need to talk about prevention of mental health issues. Because this is something that I saw happen with my own eyes in my locality. There was this individual who was the sweetest person that you interact with, who had a mental breakdown, who had a very severe episode of a mental breakdown, and they ended up harming themselves in the process of it. And because of that, they are right now thrown out of their rented home. They are out in the streets looking for a place to stay. Is this fair? Is this something that we can acknowledge as something we would do if somebody was physically ill? No, none of us would even consider this. But why do we have to do this for mentally ill people? It's not even mentally ill people. I'm using the words wrong there. It is people with mental illness. They're just people just like all of us. Right? They just have some kind of difference in the way that their brain functions. That's it. So it is not right of us to even think about depriving basic rights for individuals. And that is something that we need to still address in India. We're still a long way to go on that particular area. Anything else that you'd like to add on to this? Any other anecdotes that you would like to add on to this? Anything that you would like to share with regard to this? Nothing? Okay. So I would like to ask you a question. Can you see that there's this word called treatment gap? What do you think this is? What do you think this implies?
Please pardon me. Please come again. I can't hear it properly.
Yeah, my question is, what do we mean by treatment gap? You can see the word here on the PPT. So what do you think this word means? Treatment gap.
Maybe the gap between diagnosis and treatment started, or before a diagnosis, is there any time period?
Okay, good guess. Good guess. Anybody else? Would you like to answer this?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
treatment gap, the short form of it is TG, mainly used for mental disorders. That refers to the difference that how many people have actually received the
Yes.
care and concern, and those between those who have not been cared.
Okay. Cure is a strong word here. I wouldn't use the word cure. So
Yeah,
let's
okay.
reword that a little bit and say the treatment gap here refers to how many people actually need help, actually need treatment, versus how many people actually get treatment. And in India, this
Receive.
is very, very high,
Hmm.
right? Because the difference between those who need help and those who are actually getting help is very high because of lack of awareness and stigma and myths that are associated with mental illness. And typically, most people are not even aware that such treatments are available. Most people are not even aware that there is a chance for improvement of their mental state or their distress, right? And this is where this high treatment gap is coming from. Are we on the same page so far? Are you all with me?
Ma'am, please repeat. What did you ask?
Are you all with me on this so far? Does it make sense to you?
Madam, I am not able to hear you properly. Can you be a little louder, please?
Just give me a moment. Let me just stop sharing my screen. I think there's something wrong with my audio. I'll just check that in a minute. Am I audible now?
Yeah, ma'am, audible, but the sound is sound is lowered.
Okay, I think it's because I just happened to move a little bit away from my laptop. I apologize. Let's get back to our PPT. So Any questions, any doubts so far that you'd like to ask? Any questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay, awesome. We're just going to move ahead then. Okay, so we're going to talk about the next thing here. What do we have right now? Because you need to understand what is available in India right now so that you can tell people about what to look for, right? There are various acts, there are various programs, there are various, schemes available for those who have disabilities, especially when we say physical disabilities. There are a lot of acts available in India that tell you about the concessions and special privileges that they would exercise if they have certain difficulty, right? But with regard to mental health, this is something that we came up with only in 1982, which has also been revamped and given right now as the Mental Health Act, right? So we're going to talk about the precursor of the Mental Health Act, which is the National Mental Health Program, right? So the objectives of this particular program is to ensure the availability and accessibility of minimum mental health care for all. So we have to focus on these three words here: availability, accessibility, and minimum mental health care, right? So it is clearly talking about how we should increase the number of professionals and the knowledge that professionals exist, and for bare minimum mental health care to ensure that your condition or your distress does not get worsened, right? That is our first point when we talk about the objectives of NMHP. Okay. So here we're going to focus on, of course, when we're talking about India, there's always this clause that we always need to consider: the most vulnerable and underprivileged sections of the population. Because if you look into the diversity of populations in India, there's a very strong divide between those who are privileged and underprivileged. It is not a very subtle difference, but rather a very strong difference. So this particular mental health program is devised to reach to those who are underprivileged and those who are most vulnerable in the population, right? And if you look into the second point here, it is to encourage the application of mental health knowledge in general healthcare and social development. So this goes on with what our obligations are as mental health professionals. It is not just that we need to talk about how we are helping the client in front of us, but rather what difference are we able to make for the clients that may be, coming to us in the future, and for the entire population that we are actually working with. What difference are we making for them? We should be able to make some kind of basic difference, right? And that is the second point, because we need to encourage younger children to learn more about psychology, to understand that there is a lot more importance of understanding others' behavior, of empathy and things like that, so that we can encourage a more nurturing environment. And this in and of itself will encourage increased mental health, right? Moving on to the third point, it talks about the promotion of community participation in mental health services. Why do you think this is very important, especially when we talk about any act coming into play? Why do you think community participation is an important aspect of any act being a success?
Community is important because, ma'am, when he or she is diagnosed, he or she has any kind of mental illness or anything else, without the help of the community people, she or he becomes isolated otherwise. Because she have to live in the society other than
Yes.
yes, ma'am.
Yes,
We
yes,
are
absolutely.
actually human
Yeah.
beings. That is, we are social beings. So being
Yes,
social is the main priority. So directly or indirectly, we are all linked and dependent on the community. So that is why the community
absolutely.
participation is needed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anybody else, would you like to answer this? Anybody else? Okay, you're all right. When we talk about community participation, it is something that we should be able to encourage, because there are multiple areas in mental health where the community is always involved. Yes? Did anybody unmute? Did somebody unmute? Are we okay?
Yes, ma'am, everything is okay.
Okay, okay, all right. So when we talk about community, the community is always involved in any individual's mental health, because there are multiple ways in which the community is involved. First thing is, the community could be one of the reasons why an individual's symptoms may be increased in intensity or decreased in intensity, because they are the environment that this particular individual is living in. So if you've heard of this, have you heard of the diathesis stress model of schizophrenia? Have you heard of it?
Ma'am, repeat.
Diathesis stress model. Have you heard of it? Anybody? Please do unmute and answer, because I will not be able to see the chat. No idea? All right. So I'm just going to explain a little bit, a brief about this diathesis stress model. So when we talk about schizophrenia, we clearly know that there are positive symptoms, there are negative symptoms, and there are disoriented behavior and thought, things like that, right? So this diathesis stress model talks about this revolutionary understanding in the cause of any mental health disorder, where it talks about there being a genetic predisposition for any disorder to occur. Because if a particular disorder is occurring, then there's a possibility that they have some kind of genetic predisposition to it, right? So if there is a genetic predisposition, this does not, however, determine the fact that this individual is going to develop this disease or this disorder for sure. Okay, I'm going to repeat that for you again. Just because an individual has a genetic predisposition does not mean that they will develop the symptoms of the disorder, right? What ensures or what leads to development of the symptoms is the environment that this particular individual is surrounded in. If this individual is succumbed to increased and, let's say, uncontrollable stress, right? They are exposed to high levels of stress. Then this theory states that that is the moment where these symptoms will start expressing themselves, right? So when I say somebody is going through stress, is it that this individual is going to undergo stress all alone by themselves, or is it going to be somewhere the situation is involved, some other people are involved that may lead them to feel that stress? What are we looking at here? Anybody? Will a person feel stress all by themselves, or is it the situation and the people around them that causes them to feel the stress? I would really appreciate some interaction right now. I'm not sure whether you all understand where I'm at or not. Please do respond.
Ma'am, please repeat the question once again.
My question is, do you think an individual will feel stressed all by themselves, or is the stress caused by an interaction of situation and the people around them?
Ma'am, actually it
Yes, ma'am.
depends.
Yes. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. It's individual also and around also. When we going to the exam, that's the environment, especially in 10th class.
Mhm.
It's a total pressure.
Yeah. So why do we feel that pressure? It is just because of us,
Because of
or
environment.
is it that we are trying to get some kind of expectations fulfilled, some expectations
Yeah,
that are also set onto us, or something that we are also expecting because of situations, right? So it is never going to be just this individual who is going to create the stress, right? There's always an involvement of situation, there's always an involvement of other people interacting in the situation, right?
for future tension also.
Yeah, exactly. So there's always this thing that we are anticipating, and there's an interaction of how the situation is and how other people in the situation are going to respond to your behavior or your thought that will create stress in this individual, right? So here, when we talk about the diathesis stress model, it talks about the fact that even if an individual has genetic predisposition, it is not necessarily that these symptoms are going to get expressed, but there's a high chance of symptoms being developed when this individual is exposed to extreme stress. So even when we talk about cause of a mental health disorder, there's a high involvement of community. So that's where I'm getting at. So community participation is not only in understanding how their behavior can lead to a mental health disorder, but also in helping them rehabilitate individuals back into the community. Because if something has stressed you and some kind of interaction is triggering you a lot, and that does not change, let's say you've tried to change your thoughts, you've gone out to a hospital, let's say you are an inpatient there, you've worked out, you're feeling much better, right? You worked out your problems and your issues, your thought processes are better now, and you're feeling much better. You're going back to your community, and your community is still the same way, exactly the way you left it, right? Would you be able to apply your new thought processes and your thought patterns over there, or would you still go back to how you used to be? What would you expect from this individual?
No, ma'am. Here, behavior modification is necessary because without that, it is not possible without proper training of that person. It is not possible for him to control his thought in that same environment day by day.
Exactly. So putting this individual who's gone through so much of therapy, medication, and all of those things in the same environment that happened to cause the symptoms or increase the symptoms is not going to help them maintain the improvement, right? So therefore, even in that sense, community participation is going to come in, because as this individual is in the inpatient, getting their treatment, helping themselves out, we as mental health professionals are going to go out into the community and create awareness saying, hey, this individual is having this and this symptoms. So how do you as a community handle somebody who has such symptoms? How do you be empathetic with an individual that has such symptoms? How do you make them feel better and belonged in a community where they may have certain symptoms, right? So you go out and you put in the effort to help other people understand so that this individual can be well accommodated and feel belong within the community once they come back. Does that make sense to you? Are we on the same page?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Any
Understood, ma'am.
questions?
Yes, ma'am. Just to
Yes.
summarize, we can say that this model actually says that how biological interacts with the environmental influences to produce some disorders.
Exactly.
Okay.
So diathesis stress model is one of the most important causal theories when we talk about any mental health disorder. So please look into it if you're interested. I encourage you to read more on it if you're interested on it. Can we move on to the next one?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome.
Yeah, ma'am.
So we're going to talk about this brilliant model that's been, implemented in India, right? And that's exactly where our IEC comes in. So in this particular model, it's called the Valerie model, right? It is where we're talking about what are we going to do if we have to improve mental health in India. First thing is what we already talked about, early detection and treatment, right? Which level of prevention is this? Primary, secondary, or tertiary? Which level of prevention is early detection?
Primary, ma'am.
It is secondary. It is secondary because when we talk about primary prevention, it is about our IEC.
Oh, right, ma'am. Right.
Yeah. So early detection is where there's the disorder, but you're helping them detect it much earlier on so that the symptoms are caught at the much earlier stage. You're nipping it at the bud, right? So that is where you're going to talk about it. Then if you look at the second point, it's a very important point that we are actually looking into improving in India, which is training. Because you need to help not only ourselves. Here we're talking about mental health professionals. We're not only training mental health professionals, but we're training other people, general physicians. We're talking about social workers, health workers, general physicians, and anybody who may be interacting with the community to identify and be able to refer individuals to the right caretaker when we talk about mental health, right? So if an individual is able to identify that, let's say in this particular community, such and such a person has some kind of mental health issues, if this community does not have the required healthcare, if anybody else, if the general physician or the social worker or any health worker is able to identify that this person needs mental health help and they can refer them to some kind of healthcare, that will be the best, right? That will make a lot of our job easier because we now have other people helping us identify who needs help. And that will be great because there's more widespread reach onto those who need help. Therefore, you will be reducing this treatment gap that we already talked about. Right? So training is not only for us mental health professionals, but rather also for those who come under any other area in the healthcare professional or any other person who's working with the community. Right? So all of those people will be trained to identify who may need mental health treatment or mental health intervention. Right? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, ma'am, you are right.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I personally feel that. Practically,
yeah.
I feel that.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is where we are lacking at the moment because us mental health professionals will be able to identify through certain behavioral differences and things like that this individual may need some help. But other people are completely unaware of it. They're still falling prey to stigma, which we need to change.
Theoretically is right. Practically, we find out the real cause. It's very difficult.
Absolutely.
It takes some time. Maybe 1 month, maybe. It depends on situation and data or whatever.
Of course, of course. Anything else that you would like to add on to this point?
No, ma'am.
No? Okay. So moving on to the third point, this is also one of the components, which is exactly what we're discussing today, is IEC. IEC is nothing but information, education, and communication. Right, I'm repeating that for you again. IEC stands for information, education, and communication. This is where we're addressing our primary prevention because we are now going to create awareness using information, education, and communication based on various methodologies, various media, and all of these things, right? So IEC is very important for us to talk about primary prevention because awareness is where all of it begins, right? And when we talk about the fourth point here mentioned in this particular component, it is monitoring. Why do you think we need to monitor something here when we talk about mental health issues or mental health treatment? What are we monitoring?
Hello, monitoring, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, actually monitoring observation is basic things.
Yes.
It's main thing. If your observation is strong, then you easily identify, and then educated, give the educations. But first information is observation and monitoring, ma'am.
Exactly, of course. So when we say monitoring, it is not just identifying which individual's behavior may be a little bit different, but it also talks about how you're going to look into the progress of the whole community. Is your intervention working? Is your awareness program working? Are you seeing number of people not seeking treatment reducing in the community? Are you seeing that the number of people who are getting better because of such interventions increasing within the community? All of these things come a part of monitoring, right? This is very important because we need to know whether our programs and whatever we are doing for the community is working or not. So therefore, monitoring is one of the major aspects that we need to plan when we say any mental health related awareness program or training. Are you all with me on this?
Yes, ma'am.
It means, ma'am, assessment, ma'am.
Yes, it is not only assessments, it is every single data that you can collect, numbers, surveys, assessments, data, the kind of patient count that you can get from your health center. All of these things come under monitoring. If you're going to analyze the data for all of these things, that comes under monitoring.
Okay.
Awesome. Can we move on to the next one?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. So we're now going to talk about what IEC is because we have now understood where it comes under. We're going to go into the little bit of details with regard to IEC. As I said, it is the information, education, and communication strategy, right? Why do we need IEC? It is because we're talking about creating awareness. And this becomes a strategy that helps create this awareness, right? If you just read through this, I will read it along with you. The information, education, and communication strategy aims to create awareness and disseminate information regarding the benefits available under various schemes, programs of the ministry, and to guide the citizens on how to access them. So this IEC not only talks about awareness programs on mental health to help identify somebody who may need mental health or to identify various warning signs of mental disorders. It is not only that, but it also talks about what is available for people under various schemes and programs who may have difficulty with doing their daily life activities. For example, if people who have some kind of neurological disorder, let's say, who have issues with writing, yes, this may be due to some mental health issues or some kind of physiological issues. So they need to be aware that if you have to go to schools and write your exams, there are scribes provided. There's a scheme that helps provide scribes. And there are various opportunities where certain languages can be omitted because this individual is unable to process languages very quickly, right? And for those who may have, processing issues with regard to language and information, they actually get extra time in exams as well when we talk about college and school examinations. So all of these various schemes and programs are something that the common people need to be made aware of so that they can ensure that they get the best out of what the government has to offer. Are we on the same page so far? Does this make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. So how are we going to use this IEC? IEC, of course, you can talk about it in various senses. It is just giving information, education, and communication to whatever your target population is, right? Based on the topic that you would like to talk about, you're going to create certain things and you're going to share the message with them, share the knowledge with them, essentially. Right? So, what do you think are the various media that we can think of right now if we have to share information about mental health? What do you think is happening right now?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Can I
Please go
speak
ahead, sir.
Hindi or
Yeah,
English?
please go ahead, sir.
ओके मैम, जब भी हम कहीं जैसे कम्युनिटी में जाते हैं तो फर्स्ट जैसे आपने बताया इन्फॉर्मेशन, तो हम ऑब्जर्वेशन और मेजर के थ्रू इन्फॉर्मेशन लेते हैं मैम। ओके, देन दूसरा कम्युनिकेशन तो हम बाद में करते हैं, सेकंडरी थिंग में आता है मैम उनका क्या ऑब्जर्वेशन। उसके बाद फिर हम उसको कैसे एजुकेशन कैसे दे सकते हैं या हम कैसे समझ सकते हैं, उसको कैसे सिंप्लीफिकेशन कैसे कर सकते हैं उसका मैडम, ये देखते हैं।
Okay.
तो प्रॉब्लम्स को फाइंड आउट करते हैं, उसके बाद कम्युनिकेशन होता है मैम। कम्युनिकेशन होता है उसके बाद हम मतलब मींस मेन कोर्स पे जाते हैं मैम
Okay.
और
Okay.
ट्रीटमेंट करते हैं उसके बाद।
Yeah. So when we talk about this, essentially, we can clearly see that there is a clear hierarchy in how we are going to go about it. Need to gather information and we need to tell them about this information. We need to educate people and then we need to communicate this to whoever needs the information, right? So all of these things must be sought after when we talk about IEC. But right now, if you look into what mental health professionals are doing at this moment, do you think IEC is being handled by all of us effectively? Mental health professionals, what do you see on Instagram, Facebook, maybe even
मैम,
other
वेरी
media?
इफेक्टिव, स्पेशली मींस हम जैसे कहते हैं ना कहीं पे ज्यादा लोक संपर्क बोलते हैं, फर्स्ट हम लोक संपर्क ही करते हैं मैडम इंफॉर्मेशन के लिए। कम्युनिकेशन इज बेसिक थिंग मैम।
Exactly. So if you look into Instagram and all of these brilliant social media platforms right now, there's this sudden boom in how people are talking about mental health, right? You can clearly see that there's increase in the kind of information that is available for people. This is, of course, this is something that we need to look into to ensure that only the right information is going out of media that is verified by us mental health professionals. So that is something to look into secondary, right? But it's good to see that so many people are talking about it. It's good to see that so many people are right now openly posting about their mental health struggles, especially when we talk about celebrities being involved in this. You can clearly see that a lot of celebrities are normalizing that, yeah, I do go ahead with, all of these issues. I do have breakdowns. I do have anxious episodes. I do have panic attacks, things like that. They're much more open about it these days. That is encouraging more people to be open about it and seek help for it, right? That is something that is happening right now because of all the awareness that we are trying to reach to people, right? But this is in the mainstream. Do you think we are improving in some direction when we talk about the underprivileged people? Do you think we see a difference? What about the underprivileged people? Are we giving them any kind of awareness programs? I think anybody from the social work background will be able to give a great answer to this because that's what we are essentially doing in social work.
And ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, nowadays various movies are also showing these mental health issues in the characters or in the movie story.
Yes, yes. And I would also like to highlight that a lot more movies are showing these characters more accurately rather than portraying them as some kind of villain or some kind of bizarre character. It is
Yes,
much
but
more
ma'am,
accurate right now. Yes.
yes, ma'am. But in the positive way, that Tare Zameen Par, yes, ma'am.
Yes, of course, that was a brilliant movie that changed a lot of things for people who are looking at dyslexia and learning disabilities. For sure. There's also this brilliant movie called The Beautiful Mind that talks about schizophrenia, right? And there are a lot of movies that actually encourage people to look into how normal people who have mental illnesses are, right? And that is the brilliance of it. That's how you create awareness. So you can clearly understand from all of these examples that it's not just us, but it's how we give to our community and how the community takes the awareness forward, right? So all of this goes hand in hand with the community. So this is something we really need to keep in mind when we look into IEC. Yes. Who's unmuted? Would you like to say something?
हेलो
Yes, sir.
हाँ मैम, एक हम वो छिछोरे मूवी देखे तो वो बहुत इसमें बहुत सही बताया था मैम. हेलो
Sir, your voice is breaking. I'm not able to hear you properly. Come again.
हेलो मैम,
I think you're having weak network. Your voice is still breaking for me, sir. I don't know if it's my network or yours. If you can post it in the chat, I may be able to read it later on. So I think it's both my network and yours. Okay. So yeah, so when we talk about how IEC works, IEC is not just an obligation that is taken up by us mental health professionals, but it is also done as a scheme by our government. So every single state government has IEC material that is supposed to be shared to their community. That's in the form of flyers, that's in the form of posters. They have it on their website. I'm going to show that to you in a little bit so that we can get an understanding of it. Would you like to see that now? Yeah, I'm going to show you certain posters that's been made by our National Mental Health Program. Just give me a minute. I will share the screen with you. Can you see it? Can you see the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
So as you can see, this is one of the posters that's been made by our Indian government, especially our National Mental Health Program, Ministry of Health, right? So this is where it all began. This is one of the IEC materials that you can see of this particular ministry, right? Here's the other one that talks about issues, psychological issues that new mothers can face, psychological issues that happens when we talk about motherhood, right? Can you see all of this brilliant text here that talks about all of these brilliant things to keep in mind when you're talking about newborns and new mothers? Especially, look at this. They have details about postpartum blues, problems new mother face. This entire list is there. Bonding with your baby, taking care of your baby, how you can, see what happens with your health and things like that. Right? This is a brilliant poster, is it not?
Yes,
right? So we have this one, and looking into the next one, look into all of these things about drug and alcohol addiction, right? So there's other posters as well that talk about this, especially if disease does not discriminate, why do we? If this is a brilliant poster right? Mental health illness can happen to anybody. So we need to ensure that nobody is discriminated against. Right? This talks about equality, no? So these are materials that you can find for IEC from our own government. Right? Are you all able to follow along with me on how this works? So this is just one form in which IEC happens, which is posters and digital media. Right? What else? How else do you think IEC can take forward? What else can you do to ensure that awareness and more information is shared? You can use this slide as a guide towards telling me what you think you can do under IEC. So this is what we all already just saw: posters, flyers, leaflets, brochures, booklets can encapsulate how we can help other people who may have certain issues, messages for health education sessions, right? We can do radio broadcast and TV broadcast where we talk about certain areas of mental health that needs to be paid attention to, printed media through paper, things like that, circulated through various other means. You can even talk about activities that are part of the communication. Right? So if you take into account how social work does this brilliantly, especially in Tamil Nadu, is that we have this thing called street play, right? In Tamil, we call it Terukuthu, street play, where we take up all of these messages about mental health and mental illnesses and treatment and how to normalize all of these things, that they're just a part of everyone else. And messages like this are turned into short plays that is then demonstrated in front of an entire community, right? Just so that they can get awareness that, yeah, you know what, this is not something that is very different. This is something that anybody can have, and I should do something about it. To ensure that people think, people change their mind, to ensure that they are now thinking about what this means to them, right? That's where we begin. So this is a brilliant thing that we can see social workers do in especially rural Tamil Nadu, where they go ahead with such scripts and such plays and they demonstrate and they perform in front of the entire community, because that's a much easier way to get right to them and make sense to them, because these plays are going to be in the local language with the local dialect and everything else, right? So that will make much more sense to them rather than somebody like me talking to them in another language that they're not familiar with, right? So that is something that we can see as one of the components under IEC as well, right? And of course, comprehensive strategy, where you're looking into training, all of these things also work under IEC. Are we on the same page so far? Do I make sense to you? Do I make sense to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So currently we are at this point where we use IEC in the form of digital media. We do Instagram reels, we do videos on YouTube, we do a lot of these researches, social experiments, things like that, that ensure that there's a lot of awareness that is created. We do a lot of programs that is broadcasted live, and especially with COVID happening, there's a lot more online activity. There's a lot of webinars, seminars, all of these brilliant sessions that are being organized to ensure that there's a lot more awareness that is being put forward, right? Especially right now as mental health counselors on Instagram, there's a lot more posts on what it means to have some mental health issues and how an individual can deal with it and how the entire people around them can support these individuals who are dealing with such issues, right? This is something that we can see so far. So I would just like to briefly talk about the National Mental Health Program so that you all can read up on it if you have the time. So NMHP has 3 components, right? It talks about treatment of the mentally ill, rehabilitation, and then prevention and promotion of foster mental health. The third point is where IEC comes in, right? So these 3 are the major areas of focus when we talk about NMHP, right? We talk about how to treat mentally ill people, how to ensure that treatment becomes accessible, how to ensure that there's availability of treatment, first of all, how it is easy that we are increasing number of practitioners per number of people that is available that needs this help, right? So this is something we're talking about. And then rehabilitation is something we already spoke about in brief as well, where the community gets involved, where we're talking about how to ensure that this individual goes back to the community and still feels safe and still feels that they can maintain this newly learned behaviors and they can still improve without falling back into their old patterns, right? And then the third one is where we're talking about how to prevent mental health illnesses, and we're going to talk about, we already spoke about how to promote this positive mental health by encouraging people to nourish and nurture positive aspects of human beings, by learning to be more empathetic, by learning to be more understanding, by learning to ensure that we recognize each other as human beings and not just as some kind of machines or robots, right? So, and we encourage the identification of various emotions, feeling the feelings, things like that, right? So all of these things are the 3 components that is being addressed here. So strategies are also given here when we talk about NMHP, where first strategy is to integrate mental health with primary health care. This is where we have a large gap, because when we say mental health, it seems to always be, separately addressed than our general practitioners or primary healthcare that talks about general physicians. It needs to be integrated because it works hand in hand, right? People who may have certain mental health issues do show some kind of physical symptoms, and those who may have certain physical symptoms may show mental health symptoms as well. And this recognition needs to go hand in hand. We need to work together in order to help people. So that is one of the main strategies that's been addressed by NMHP. Second strategy is the provision of tertiary care institutions for treatment of mental disorders, where you talk about establishing inpatient care, where medication and other facilities are readily available for use of these patients. The third one is eradicating stigmatization, as this is exactly what we keep talking about. Eradicating stigmatization, ensuring that people who are mentally ill get their rights satisfied, get their protection, right? All of these things are the 3 strategies that are taken up under NMHP, right? The next one we can talk about is the distinction that they're making between mental health care and how we can have district mental health programs, especially regarding mental health care. They've talked about how mental mobility requires priority in mental health treatment, and primary healthcare at village and sub-center level needs to be established, right? And it needs to also be in at the primary healthcare center level, at the district hospital level, mental hospital and teaching psychiatric units. All of these things must be established in order to have higher rates of mental health care provided to people, right? This is one of the objectives that has also been established by NMHP. Then we talk about the district mental health program. Training programs for all workers needs to be done. We need to talk about public education in mental health to increase the stigma, increase the awareness and reduce the stigma. And then we talk about early detection and treatment and provide outpatient services so that we can ensure that people come and go with regard to whatever issues they have, so that early detection is very easy for all of us, right? And we need to provide valuable data and experience at the level of community to help future planning, to ensure that there are laws and acts in place to protect people who may need such, special concessions when you talk about their everyday life, right? Do I make sense to you so far? Any questions on this? Any questions?
No, ma'am.
Do you have any other thoughts on this that you would like to share with the rest of us here? Because with this, my entire information that I need to give to you is done. So I just like to end it with saying, let's work together. Let's not see any differences in how we're working towards it, but let's work together and work towards a better future and better place for all of us, regardless of whether somebody has distress or eustress. Let's work together to ensure that we have the compassion to treat everybody the same. That's what I have to say. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, if you'd like to share something for the class, please do so. Let's take some time to discuss if you like. Anything?
No, ma'am, everything is understood. Ma'am, basically, just for discussing IEC, IEC basically is the spreading of information to actually make understand that what exactly mental health is and why is it important.
Exactly. Exactly. So IEC is essentially what we're already doing, but sharing more information. It is just that we need to up our game a little further because we're not reaching out to who actually needs it. There's still a lot of gap. According to a survey done in 2016, for every 1 lakh people that need help in India, there's only 0.02 psychologists. So can you just make the math on that?
Yes, ma'am, it's too less. It's too low on this.
So we need to really up our game to ensure that there are a lot more professionals available, that there's a lot more awareness of how people can help. Things like even psychological first aid, before they take in any professional treatment, some kind of first aid to help them feel better at the moment can also help. So all of these programs can be aimed towards psychological first aid as well.
Yes, ma'am. It's actually a need also because nowadays even the educated people who are educated, who are MA, BEd, they also seek psychologist, going to psychologists as they are as they are themselves going to a mental asylum. So even they are so much educated. I have seen people, even I talk to them, even I say that you should talk to a counselor. They say, no, we don't need it. This is okay. This is life. They just get
Exactly.
adapted to those habits, those behavior they have, but actually they are not normal.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. We can see that, but they cannot see that because they are much too, scared that people will judge them if they see them going to, psychiatrist or a psychologist to seek some help and get better. This is something that I tell my students as well, where I keep, telling them that you are going to a psychologist to help yourself. Would you ignore if you have a high fever? Would you ignore if you have cough continuously? You wouldn't. You would immediately go check it out. If you have an infection, you would immediately go check it out. But why aren't you doing the same? Why aren't you treating yourself the same when you talk about mental health? If you're not feeling okay for quite a significant period of time, then you need to go to the person who will help you out with it, the doctor that actually addresses these issues. So this is something that needs to be made sense to a lot of people. It doesn't matter whether people are educated or not in India at all. It is just that stigma of what other people will say is much stronger than what they would do for themselves. Okay, any other questions? Anything else?
Yes, ma'am. One more.
Yeah.
Ma'am, usually we I've encountered some people who say that what is there with the counselors? They just talk. So why to give them money? Why they charge so much? So how can I handle this? Because they have to understand that this is also a profession.
Exactly. So you have to ensure that you have to make sure that you tell them the difference between, what it is like to talk to a friend and what it is like to talk to a therapist. First of all, you ensure that they understand that friends are probably going to give you an advice. If you're just going to tell a friend that they are sad, that you are sad, your friend might also just say, "Hey, high five, I'm also sad. Let's cry together," which is not going to help you. So that's one. Secondly, your friends are friends. Your friends are going to get emotionally involved. If you're not feeling okay, your friends are going to come in and do something in an emotional manner and not help you figure out a way out of this, but rather they would rather be the rescuer in the situation. They would rather come save you than let you do something on your own.
Yes, ma'am.
So that is something we don't do that as professionals. We sit back, we help them understand how they can take a step forward. So that is something. And all our approaches are based on scientific evidence. So we charge that much because we need to use our critical thinking to ensure that whatever they are saying is put into some kind of methodological, understanding, and that we are actually applying something that's been done empirically proven to help such situations. We're not just randomly talking to them. We are applying scientific data in order to help them feel better.
Yes, ma'am. Exactly.
So if anybody tells you anything regarding that, just tell them that we are researchers, we are scientists. We are talking to you based on scientific data. We're not just chatting you up. Right? That's the entire point of it.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for that question. Very interesting. Any other questions? Anything you would like to share? Would you like to share some feedback? Anything that I can improve on? Anything that I would?
No, ma'am, it was a very wonderful session. I actually didn't know about this ICC. So thank you so much for telling about this.
Thank you so much for that. Anybody else?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Today's section was very practical session. Practical in the sense, as we are becoming the counselor, the tele-counselor. So it is very important to know about us also, about the rules, the protocols. Protocols in the sense the information where
Yes.
patient can get the facilities, which facilities patient
Yes.
can avail. Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Anything else, or can we close the session for today? There's actually a lot more that you can read about when we say IEC, or what you're required to do as a part of your profession, what your ethics are. There's a lot to talk about. So, when we talk about psychology and anything about mental health and counseling, it's always an ocean. So, I encourage you to please look into it and read more about it, learn more, always seek out for opportunities for learning, because it's not just enough that we practice. We need to always seek out more information so that we are updated, so that we give the best to our clients. So that's something that I would encourage you all to do. Please seek out for more information. Keep your curiosity burning.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I think I will end the session today. Thank you for joining with me on a Sunday evening. I hope you all have a great rest of your Sunday and a great week from tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Good night.
Good night.